So here we have a 4.2 liter V6. The trouble I'm having out of it, well, it's really not trouble. It's just a symptom it has is a rough idle. And it's actually not that terrible. I've been driving it like that for 3 years without a problem. But you know, this truck is almost in perfect condition. Everything on it works bumper to bumper. And it's just in a really good truck, and I just want to kind of keep it that way. So I thought, well, I've got something else I'm driving right now. It'd be a good time to try to track down what's causing the rough idle. I don't have a check engine light, but I do suspect a vacuum leak. So I'm going to do a smoke test, and that's basically where I'm just going to inject smoke into the intake system, and it will permeate the entire, every runner on the intake and every hose. And if there's something that's not sealed, the smoke will come out and expose, where the vacuum leak is. So we're going to give that a shot. So let me talk about this little contraption just for a minute, in case you're like me. And, until a few years ago, I didn't know such a thing existed, honestly. I mean, we didn't use these when I was mechanicing back in the 90s. But they're super handy. I've used one before. So I was going to make one of these. Somebody has pretty much put together a homemade type of unit and really refined it and started selling them as a business, and they're doing really well. Like I said, I was going to make one, but my time's just too valuable. For $75, I can have one turnkey. It's got all the components, and it's pretty well built. So all you do is you find a vacuum port on the engine. In this case, I'm going to use the brake booster line because it's easy to get to, and it's a big line, shouldn't have any restrictions or anything. And you hook the other end of your hose up to your canister, and the canister has a wick in it and coils that heat up when you apply 12 volts through the switch that's connected to the battery. And before you turn it on, you fill it up with smoke fluid. Well, you don't fill it up. There's a marble in there, and you fill it up just above that marble. It'll start wicking up and get to the coils and produce smoke. Smoke fluid is basically just mineral oil. You can use mineral oil, baby oil, doesn't matter. But it came with this, so that's what I'm going to use. And you hook the, if I don't knock it in the floor, you hook the air hose up to a air compressor of any size. I happen to have a small one sitting right there, but this regulator will regulate it down to 1 psi because it doesn't take much. So that's the gist of it. Pretty neat little device. We're going to see how it works. I've never used one like this. The one I used a few years ago was actually like a commercial style unit, but those are expensive, and this thing, it's multiple uses out of it. It's relatively inexpensive. And so this is, I don't do this for a living, so it's not like I need a real nice one. So this is going to be just fine. So I've just started injecting the smoke, and I'm not really sure how long it's going to take at 1 psi to get through the whole intake system. But if it's all sealed up good, there shouldn't be any smoke coming out. But, if I've got leaks, it should start looking like a grass fire here shortly. And then it's just a matter of taking my pin light and going around and finding exactly, where the stuff's coming out of. So now, if I were a betting man, I would guesstimate that you would want to do this when the engine is relatively cold, because after it warms up, things expand, O-rings expand, seals or gaskets expand, and so right now I've got it cold, and I see the first sign of smoke. It's coming out from around this tube right here, and it goes into the throttle body, and there's 2 bolts that thing clamps to. So I'm thinking there's an O-ring in there, so I'll pull that off and see what I got to do to seal that up. That's not a huge leak, but it's definitely a leak. Well, you'll have to excuse the mess. Oh, there was an incident. But I've got if the camera can, let me see if I can put you down there. I've got a small leak crawling up the very back of the intake manifold. So those are the only two leaks I can find. One of them is an O-ring right there in the side of the throttle body. That should be a fairly easy fix as long as it's not some oddball size O-ring that I can't find. The other is at the very back of the intake manifold. It's not nearly as bad as that one. So probably what I'm going to do is I'm going to fix that one. And if that smooths out the idle, again, the idle's not terrible. It's just, I just noticed it's a little bit on the rough side. So that may very well fix it. That's the biggest leak. So I'm going to try that first. If that doesn't fix it, I'll have to weigh if I want to pull this manifold back out. I say back out. I had it off like 12 years ago. The isolator bolts, the seals on the isolator bolts had gotten dry and just started leaking. And when that happens, you have similar symptoms. I didn't really notice a rough idle, but the check engine light came on. Ran the codes, it said isolator bolts. It was a well-known issue with these 4.2s. Just FYI, if you have a 4.2, 2002 and up is when, or in 2002 is when they went to the plastic upper plenum. And it's a two-piece. And then you have the aluminum intake manifold underneath it. When they went to these plastic plenums, they used these isolator bolts with seals. And the factory isolator seals were subpar and they were prone to leak. It trips your check engine light. That's how you kind of know what's going on there. So I put new isolator bolts in mine about 12 years ago. So I've had it out before. I don't remember, it's just been too dang long. I don't remember what's on the very back of that manifold or if that's my actual intake manifold gasket's leaking, which would suck because, you got to pull the manifold off the heads and a lot of other crap. And so anyway, I'm just going to fix this up here first and see if that solves my rough idle. If so, I'll probably let that little bit in the back just kind of pretend I didn't see that. So anyway, that's how the little smoke test works. Handy little unit. And like I said, this is like $75. So this is actually cheaper for you to buy the stuff, do it yourself, at probably half of what you would spend at a mechanic shop, taking it in to have diagnostics run on it. So there's that. Another fun fact about this little unit, you can use this to find exhaust leaks also. You shove it up the tailpipe with they make an adapter for your exhaust pipe you can use, or you can make one out of a potato or whatever, and fill the exhaust up with smoke, crawl under there, look for leaks just like I'm doing on this intake manifold. You can also use it for the evap system. So it's a pretty handy little rig. So here's the O-ring I believe is defective. Just two T15 torque screws that held, let me get the camera, held this into the throttle body, and that O-ring looks, I don't know, I don't think it's in very good shape. So regardless, that's where it was leaking. So I'm going to see if I can't find me a new O-ring to go on that. So miraculously, I happen to have the exact size O-ring I needed, and I've got smoke on it right now, and it's been on it for the last several minutes, and I don't have a lick of smoke coming out of that spot anymore. So that's good news. I'm going to crank it up here in a second, see if it runs any better. Man, it's running smooth as silk now. There is zero rough idle. I bet that was 99% of that little bit of rough idle it had. Yeah, I used to feel it in the seat a little bit. I don't feel anything. That's all right, I like that. So I believe that'll wrap up part 2 of the F150 project. Got a couple more interesting things to do to this truck, and I will see you guys in the next one. This little smoke machine's really cool. You just bloop, plug this in any orifice you can find, and you can check for leaks.